The long silence of space was broken by a faint pulse. It came not from a human ship, not from an alien patrol, but from deep inside the border where no one had traveled for generations. It was a simple call, repeating again and again, carrying only 3 words in an ancient emergency code: SOS, help us. Aboard the human fleet's command ship Resolute, Captain Myra sat in her chair, listening as the echo filled the control room. The sound was not loud, but it carried a weight that made the crew uneasy. Many had served long years in the Navy, yet none of them had ever heard a real distress signal in such a dead region of space. "Source located?" Myra asked, her voice calm. Lieutenant Bren, the young officer at the console, studied his screen. "Yes, Captain. The origin is far out, near the edge of Sector Black. The signal is old but repeating. Strength is weak. Estimate hundreds of years since first broadcast." The room grew quiet. Sector Black was not a place humans or aliens liked to speak of. It was a scar on the star maps, a zone marked with wrecks and silence. Entire expeditions had been lost there in the past, and no one knew the truth of what had happened. "Ghosts of the past," muttered Engineer Tom, shaking his head. "Captain, that place is cursed. Every alien ally says so. Nothing good will come of flying there." Bren nodded nervously. "They say even machines fail inside Sector Black. No one survives long." Myra kept her eyes on the screen. "And yet," she said, "a call for help remains. Someone sent it. Someone wanted to be heard." Her words carried weight. Humanity was known as a Deathworld species, born on a harsh planet where storms, beasts, and fire had shaped them into survivors. To many alien races, humans were reckless for their courage, but also respected for their stubborn refusal to leave any cry unanswered. The crew shifted uneasily. Their training told them to avoid unnecessary danger, but their human nature pulled them the other way. "Captain," Bren said softly, "our orders do not require us to respond. We can pass the report to command and wait." Myra stood, her eyes sharp. "Command will wait, debate, and study until the signal fades again. I will not. If there is a chance someone still waits for rescue, then we must go." Tom frowned. "And if it is a trap?" Myra answered without hesitation. "Then we face it as we always do. Head on." The debate was over. The crew knew their captain well. Myra was not reckless for glory. She carried the memory of past missions where hesitation had cost lives. She would never allow silence to win over action. "Prepare the fleet," Myra ordered. "We set course for the signal." The announcement spread quickly through the human ships. Some cheered, proud to live up to humanity's reputation. Others muttered about the danger of wandering into cursed space. But no one refused. Humans argued often, but when a decision was made, they stood together. As the fleet moved, a message was sent to their alien allies. The reply came swift and cold. The Alien Council warned them not to enter Sector Black. They said the signal was a remnant of dead civilizations and that nothing lived there now. One alien elder wrote, "Humans risk too much for shadows. Leave the dead to their silence." The crew read the message, but Myra deleted it from the main screen. "They do not understand," she said simply. "We are not built to ignore a voice calling for help." The journey into the border was long. Outside the windows of the ships, stars thinned, replaced by drifting metal and silent husks of ancient fleets. Wreckage floated endlessly, some still glowing faintly with radiation. Each fragment was a memory of battles no one recorded, wars lost to time. "Graveyard of steel," Tom whispered as he looked out. "Or warning," Bren replied. The pulse of the SOS continued, steady, unchanged. It was like a heartbeat in the darkness, guiding them forward. Days passed as they crossed deeper. Strange readings appeared, disruptions in power, whispers of interference that touched their instruments. It was as if the sector itself wanted to push them back. The crew grew tense. Sleep was uneasy. Dreams filled with echoes of the signal, pulling them onward like a voice just beyond hearing. Some wondered if they were chasing a ghost. Others felt pride that, even in fear, they kept moving. Myra never showed doubt. She reminded them at each briefing, "We are Deathworlders. Our world taught us to climb mountains, to cross oceans, to fight storms. What is one dark sector compared to that? We will face it together." Her words lit fire in weary hearts. At last, after long travel through the graveyard, the readings grew sharper. The source was close, hidden among broken hulks of ships older than any human design. The fleet slowed, careful, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. "Signal is strongest here," Bren reported. "It comes from inside that debris field." The crew looked at the screen. A cluster of shattered vessels floated together, their twisted metal forming a cage around something at the center. The SOS pulsed from within, weak but stubborn, a cry that had refused to die for centuries. Myra leaned forward in her chair. "There," she said, her voice steady. "That is where we begin." The fleet prepared to enter the field, unaware that the choice they had made would change the future of not only their people, but many others across the galaxy. The fleet drifted closer to the wreckage field. The ships moved in careful formation, their lights cutting through the silence. The broken hulks that surrounded them looked ancient, their designs strange and unfamiliar. Some were as large as cities, their hulls split wide open as if torn apart by something vast and merciless. Others were no more than fragments, still circling in endless paths around unseen centers of gravity. Captain Myra sat at the front of the command deck, watching the dark shapes on the main screen. Her hands rested calmly on the arms of her chair, but her eyes stayed sharp. Every shadow could be danger. Every broken hull could hide something waiting. Lieutenant Brand studied the scanner. "Readings are unstable, Captain. Interference is strong here. It looks like the wrecks themselves give off strange fields." "Cause?" Myra asked. Brand shook his head. "Unknown. Could be remnants of old reactors, or something worse." Engineer Tom grunted from his station. "Every alien we spoke to warned us. They said machines fail in this place, ships vanish, crews go silent. I am starting to believe their stories." Myra gave him a glance. "Stories are meant to warn, but they do not decide our path. We decide." Her words were steady, and though unease still sat in the crew's stomachs, they found comfort in her voice. The signal grew clearer as they moved deeper into the debris. It pulsed in rhythm, patient and endless, like a voice that had never stopped calling. The crew listened in silence. Some wondered what kind of being had the will to send such a signal for so long. The fleet slowed to half speed. The navigation team carefully plotted a path through the wrecks, avoiding sharp metal that drifted dangerously close. The ship's hulls groaned as they brushed against old fragments. Every sound made the crew jump, though they tried not to show it. "Contact ahead," Brand said suddenly. Something solid in the center of the wreck field. "Looks like a ship, but different from the rest." The screen shifted to show a shadow among the wreckage. It was larger than the others, its hull dented but not fully broken. Strange symbols ran across its side, glowing faintly as if refusing to die even after centuries. Tom frowned. "That is no design I have ever seen. Not human. Not from any ally. Could it be the source?" Bren nodded. "Yes, Captain. Signal is strongest from that vessel." The room fell quiet. They had found it. The ship that called across time, across silence. The one that had waited for someone to answer. "Bring us closer," Myra ordered. The fleet moved with care, ships sliding through the wreckage until the strange vessel filled the screen. Its surface was dark silver, patched with scars of old battles. Whole sections of it looked hollowed out, yet its core still glowed faintly, like embers from a dying fire. Life signs? Myra asked. Bren hesitated. I detect something faint, but it is hard to read. Could be machinery. Could be a survivor. The thought of a survivor froze the crew. Could someone have lived through centuries, trapped alone in the graveyard of space? It seemed impossible, yet the SOS was proof that something endured. Myra leaned forward. Prepare a boarding team. We will see the truth for ourselves. Tom's eyes widened. You mean to send our people inside that? Captain, we do not know what waits there. Myra's gaze stayed fixed on the vessel. We will never know unless we step forward. Humans did not survive on Earth by hiding from storms. We faced them. This is no different. The crew obeyed. A small group of soldiers and engineers suited up, their armor reflecting the dim lights of the docking bay. Their faces were calm, though their eyes betrayed nerves. None spoke of fear, but all felt it. The boarding craft detached from the Resolute and drifted toward the alien vessel. Inside the craft, silence reigned. Each member checked their equipment again and again, not because they doubted it, but because they needed something to steady their hands. They reached a cracked docking port on the alien hull. The airlock sealed with a hiss. For a long moment, the boarding team stared at the door in front of them, unsure what they would see on the other side. The hatch opened with a groan of ancient metal. The team stepped inside, lights cutting through the darkness. Dust floated like ash, disturbed for the first time in centuries. The halls were wide, built for beings taller than humans. The walls were lined with faded symbols, some glowing weakly. Strange energy here, one engineer whispered over the COMM systems are half alive, half dead. As if the ship itself refuses to let go. They moved deeper, following the signal's pulse. It grew stronger the further they walked, guiding them through empty corridors and past broken chambers. No bodies were seen, only silence and cold. At last, they entered a chamber at the heart of the vessel. In the center stood a tall stasis pod, its glass cracked but still holding a figure inside. The being within was thin, its skin pale silver, its body frail. Yet faint signs of life flickered on the monitors around the pod. Life confirmed, Bran's voice said through the comm from the Resolute. The boarding team froze in awe. After centuries, against all reason, someone had survived. Back on the Resolute, Myra rose slowly from her chair. Her crew turned to her, waiting for her decision. She looked at the image on the screen, the lonely survivor kept alive by machines older than human history. Bring them aboard, she said firmly. No one who calls for help will be left behind. The crew felt a surge of pride. They were deep in a graveyard feared by all, yet they had found life. Where others saw only death and silence, humans had chosen to answer. The fleet prepared to recover the survivor, unaware that their choice had awakened not only a life, but also the shadow of an old enemy that had once nearly destroyed the galaxy. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of the stasis pod. The figure inside did not move, yet the monitors told a different story. Weak signals of life flickered across their screens, each pulse a fragile proof that the being endured. Captain Myra stood on the command deck of the Resolute, her eyes fixed on the live feed from the boarding team's cameras. Around her, the crew waited for her command. They had crossed the cursed sector, moved through the graveyard of ships, and now stood face to face with a mystery older than any record they knew. Status? Myra asked. Lieutenant Bren answered quickly. Pod systems are unstable. Power is fading. If we do nothing, life support will fail within days. Maybe sooner. Engineer Tom frowned at the screen. That pod has kept this being alive for centuries. That is no simple technology. But it is failing. If we move them, we may risk killing them. Myra's eyes narrowed. And if we do not move them? Then they will die here, Tom admitted. The choice was clear. Myra gave the order. Prepare medical support. Bring them aboard. We will do what we can. The boarding team moved carefully, securing the pod with grab locks before carrying it back through the corridors. The silence of the alien ship seemed heavier now, as if it mourned the departure of its last passenger. Dust drifted like ash around them until the hatch closed once more. When the pod reached the Resolute, medical crews rushed forward. They transferred the figure into a containment chamber designed to stabilize unknown life forms. Monitors beeped weakly as they worked. The being slowly opened its eyes. They were large and pale, glowing faintly in the dim light. For a moment, confusion clouded them. Then fear. The creature's thin arms twitched, pressing weakly against the glass. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out. The crew watched in silence, waiting. Dr. Lian, the ship's chief medic, leaned close. They are trying to speak, Captain. Their lungs are weak. They need time. Myra nodded. Let them rest. But stay close. Hours passed before the being gathered enough strength to form words. Their voice was thin, broken, but clear enough to understand. Who answers the call? Myra stepped forward so the figure could see her. We are humans. From Earth. We heard your SOS. The alien's eyes widened. They studied Myra with a mixture of wonder and disbelief. Humans. I know that word. Deathworlders. Dangerous, reckless. And yet, you came. Myra did not flinch. We came because you asked. No cry for help should go unanswered. The alien closed its eyes for a long moment, as if holding back memories. When they opened again, there was sadness in them. My name is Raal. I am the last of my people. We called for help long ago, but no one came. Not the Council, not the Allies, not the traitors. Only silence. We thought the stars had turned their backs. Raal's voice trembled, but he forced himself to continue. The swarm destroyed us. Machines that consume and build, without end. We fought them until we had nothing left. My vessel was broken, my crew gone. I sent the signal before I entered stasis. I did not expect to wake. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The word swarm carried weight. Rumors of machine plagues existed in every corner of the galaxy, but none had faced them in living memory. To hear it from a survivor gave those rumors new life. Bren asked carefully, the swarm, is it still out there? Raal looked at him with hollow eyes. Yes. They never stop. If they are not here, they are rebuilding elsewhere. They will spread again. They always spread. The control room grew tense. Tom muttered under his breath, we walked into a nightmare. Myra, however, kept her voice steady. Then we will face it, as we always have. Tell us what you know, Raal. Help us understand. Raal studied her, clearly torn between hope and doubt. At last he spoke. You are Deathworlders. You have the strength others fear. Perhaps you can do what we could not. Perhaps you can stand where we fell. The medical monitors beeped as Raal's strength faded again. The doctors urged him to rest, but his gaze stayed fixed on Myra. You are the first to answer. Do not let it be for nothing. Myra placed her hand against the glass, a silent promise. We will not. The crew carried the weight of those words as the chamber dimmed, leaving Raal to recover. Outside the windows, the graveyard of ships stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to battles long past. But now the silence was broken. The cry for help had been heard, and with it, the shadow of an old enemy stirred. On the command deck, Bran turned to Myra. Captain, if the swarm is truly alive, then this signal was not just a rescue call. It was a warning. Myra nodded. Her gaze was steady, unshaken. Then humanity will answer that as well. The crew fell silent, knowing their path had shifted. They had come seeking the source of an old signal. What they found was a survivor, a story of destruction, and a threat that could reach every world if left unchecked. Humanity had stepped into the dark zone not only as rescuers, but as the first line of defense. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of monitors. Rahl lay inside a protective chamber, his breathing shallow but steadier than before. Captain Myra stood nearby, her hands behind her back, while Dr. Lian checked the readings. The alien's body was weak, yet his mind was sharp. When Rahl opened his eyes again, Myra leaned closer. "Rest easy. You are safe here." Rahl gave a faint shake of his head. "Safe? No. Not while the swarm exists." The words carried weight. Everyone in the room felt it. Lieutenant Bren, who had been recording the conversation, frowned. "We need to know more. What exactly are we facing?" Rahl's pale eyes moved to him. "They are not like you or me. They are not alive. They are machines without end. They consume metal, stone, even the bodies of those they kill, and turn them into more of themselves. Each part of them is both weapon and builder. They have no fear. They have no limit." A chill spread through the crew. Tom muttered, "So the old stories were true." Rahl closed his eyes as if remembering horrors. "My people fought them for centuries. At first we thought victory was possible. We had fleets, weapons, courage. But every battle cost us more than them. For each ship we destroyed, they built 10. For every victory we claimed, they adapted. We burned our worlds to slow them, but still they came. In the end, we were not defeated in a single war. We were erased step by step, until only silence remained." The room was heavy with his words. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally Myra broke the silence. "If the swarm survived, why has it not spread again?" Rahl looked at her weakly. "They suffered damage in the war. They lost their central core, the heart that directed their growth. Without it, they retreated to rebuild. But they will rise again. They always rise." The thought of such an enemy rebuilding in silence made the crew uneasy. Bran checked his console. "Captain, we can scan the sector. If any swarm remains, we may detect them." Myra nodded. "Do it." The order was carried out at once. Drones were released from the fleet, their small engines buzzing as they scattered across the graveyard of ships. They sent back streams of data, mapping the field and scanning for unusual energy signatures. At first the readings were calm. The drones passed over wreckage, broken reactors, and empty hulls. Then one by one, signals began to appear. Weak energy pulses. Moving shadows. Heat rising from places where there should be only cold. "Captain," Bran said, his voice tense. "Multiple contacts. Very small, but active. They are not wreckage. They are building." The screen lit up with images of the swarm. Tiny machine drones crawled across old ships, cutting into their metal, feeding it into their bodies. Some combined into larger forms, creating new frames from the scraps. What had looked like ruins were nests, and the swarm was still alive. Tom swore under his breath. "It is worse than I imagined. They use the graveyard as a factory." The crew watched as more drones stirred. Their movements were slow at first, but purposeful. Like ants rebuilding a hive after winter. Rahl's voice was faint but sharp. "This is how it begins. At first small, unnoticed. Then they spread, faster and faster. Until there is nothing left but them." Myra straightened. Her decision came without hesitation. "We cannot leave them here. If they rebuild unchecked, they will reach the borders of known space. Entire worlds will fall before command even learns the truth." Bran hesitated. "Captain, Our fleet is small. We were not sent to fight a war. We are explorers, scouts. To attack here could mean losing everything. Myra's gaze was steady. And to retreat means handing the galaxy to them. No. If this is the threat we face, then we fight it here, before it spreads. The crew felt the fire in her voice. Fear still lingered, but pride rose to meet it. Humanity had always been reckless in the eyes of other races, but it was the same recklessness that had carried them through storms, through hunger, through endless danger. Tom leaned forward. If we are to fight, we must be smart. Direct combat may not work. But perhaps we can use the field itself. These wrecks, this debris, even the gravity currents. They can become weapons if we learn to use them. Myra gave a small nod. Good. Begin planning. I want every option ready. Rahl watched with disbelief. You are not retreating. You know what they are, and yet you choose to stand. Myra met his eyes. We are humans. When the call for help came, we answered. When danger stands before us, we fight. That is who we are. Rahl studied her in silence, then gave a slow nod. Perhaps you are the answer my people never found. The drones continued to send back images of the swarm spreading among the wrecks. Already, structures were forming, towers of stolen metal rising like dark spires. The swarm had noticed the humans now, their movements shifting toward the fleet. The first battle was no longer a question. It was coming. On the command deck, Myra stood tall. Signal all ships. Prepare weapons. We face the machines. The crew straightened at their stations. Fear was still there, but it was no longer the master. Determination had taken its place. The silent graveyard was no longer silent. War had awakened again, and this time, humanity stood ready to answer. The fleet moved into battle formation. Human ships spread out across the graveyard, their lights cutting through the dark like sharp blades. The wrecks around them drifted slowly, massive shadows waiting to collide. On the command deck of the Resolute, Captain Myra stood with her hands clasped behind her back. Every officer watched their screens, reading the swarm's movements. The machines were no longer hiding. Small units had broken away from the wrecks and were gliding through space toward the humans. They looked like shards of black metal, fast and sharp. Lieutenant Bren reported, contacts approaching. Estimated numbers increasing by the minute. At least 200 small drones already moving. Larger forms assembling behind them. Myra nodded. Hold steady. Let them come closer. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected the captain to order weapons fire at once, but Myra was waiting. She studied the map of the field, eyes following the drifting wrecks. Her mind was not on the first wave, but on the battle as a whole. Engineer Tom leaned forward. Captain, if they reach us, we risk heavy damage. Their weapons are unknown, but I do not think they are weak. Myra finally raised her hand. Signal the fleet. Open fire when they cross the line. Moments later, the dark swarm crossed into range. Human ships unleashed their guns. Streams of fire lit up the blackness, tearing through the first wave. Explosions scattered fragments of metal across the field. Cheers rose on the command deck as the first enemy drones fell. But the swarm did not break. More machines poured forward, replacing the fallen without pause. They swarmed around wrecks, using debris as shields, pressing closer with relentless speed. Second wave incoming. Bren shouted. They are adapting to our fire. The enemy drones shifted their shapes, extending plates of armor to block shots, combining into groups for protection. The human fleet fired again, but fewer machines fell this time. The swarm was learning. Tom slammed his fist against the console. That is what Rahl warned us about. They adapt to everything. Myra kept her calm. Then we adapt faster. Shift formations. Use the wrecks as cover. Make the field work for us. Orders spread quickly. Human ships darted through the graveyard, weaving between broken hulks. The swarm followed, but the field turned against them. Huge fragments of metal spun into their path, scattering their formations. Human gunners used the chance to pick them off one by one. Explosions shook the sector. Fire bloomed among the wrecks, lighting the dark with sudden bursts of color. The humans fought fiercely, their instincts turning the chaotic field into a weapon. Where the swarm saw only obstacles, humans saw opportunity. In the medical bay, Rahl watched the battle on a small screen. His pale eyes widened as he saw human ships diving through tight spaces, using speed and daring to outmaneuver the machines. His people had always fought in order, in strict formations, but the humans fought like storm winds. Wild, unpredictable, and impossible to control. Deathworlders, he whispered to himself. They make chaos into strength. Back on the Resolute, alarms rang as one of the escort ships was struck. A swarm of drones latched onto its hull, cutting through armor. Sparks flew as they tried to tear the ship apart. Ship Guardian under attack. Bran shouted. Myra's voice was sharp. Signal them to vent atmosphere on the outer decks. Burn them off. The order was carried out. Jets of air burst from the damaged ship, blasting the drones into space. The gunners then cut them down with focused fire. The Guardian limped but survived. Still, the numbers of the swarm grew. Larger machines began to appear, rising from the wrecks. They looked like twisted warships, made from pieces of other vessels. Their weapons glowed red, charging for heavy fire. New contacts. Bran warned. Larger units, size of destroyers. Tom cursed under his breath. They are building as they fight. We cannot let them grow. Myra knew the truth. If the swarm continued unchecked, the humans would be drowned in endless numbers. This first clash was only the beginning. She raised her voice so all ships could hear. We are Deathworlders. We do not yield to storms. We do not run from fire. These machines believe they can outlast us, but they do not know humanity. We fight for every life, for every voice that calls. Stand firm. Make them learn who we are. The comms filled with voices of agreement. Fear gave way to determination. Human ships turned back toward the swarm with renewed strength. The battle raged on. Drones shattered under heavy fire. Large swarm ships broke apart when humans lured them into collisions with wreckage. Explosions echoed like thunder across the void. But the cost was real. Human ships took damage. Hulls burned, shields flickered, systems strained under the endless assault. The swarm did not stop. For every wave destroyed, another appeared. On the command deck, Bran whispered, "Captain, how long can we hold?" Myra's eyes stayed on the screen. Her face was calm, but her voice carried steel. "As long as we must. This is only the first clash. We will not break." The swarm pressed forward, but the humans met them blow for blow. Chaos ruled the battlefield, yet within that chaos, the humans found strength. The first battle of the Dark Zone was far from over, but one truth had already become clear. Against an enemy that feared nothing and adapted to everything, humanity had shown what made them different. They fought not only with weapons, but with will. And in the endless dark, will could be the strongest weapon of all. The battlefield of wreckage stretched endlessly. Fires glowed among broken ships, casting flickering light across the dark sector. The swarm advanced relentlessly, larger machines moving from one wreck to another, feeding on metal and building new forms. Human ships darted through the field, their weapons firing in precise bursts, yet the numbers of the swarm began to overwhelm them. Captain Myra stood on the command deck of the Resolute, eyes fixed on the tactical display. She could see the swarm closing in from multiple directions. Some human ships were damaged, others struggling to maintain formation. The first clash had been fierce, but this was a test of endurance. Lieutenant Brand turned to her. "Captain, the swarm is adapting faster than we expected. They are coordinating attacks. If this continues, we may be surrounded." Myra's hands clenched briefly. "Then we change the battlefield. Use the debris, the wrecks, everything we can. We will turn their strength against them." Engineer Tom nodded. "There are asteroid clusters nearby. We can lure them through. Collision will destroy some and slow others. If we time it right, we can cut their numbers significantly." Myra gave a firm nod. "Do it. Everyone, follow my orders exactly. Timing is everything." The fleet shifted, moving toward the clusters. Smaller ships moved first, drawing the swarm's attention. They fired as they retreated, forcing the machines to follow. Large swarms began to funnel into the narrow gaps between asteroids, their movements hampered by the terrain. "Now!" Myra shouted. Jets of force and targeted explosions pushed massive wrecks into the path of the swarm. Metal collided with metal, crushing drones and dismantling larger forms. Some of the human ships used the chaos to strike from unexpected angles, firing at weakened points in the enemy formations. Rahl watched from the medical bay, his pale eyes wide. "Such tactics, my people never thought to fight like this. Humans turn danger into weapon. They are, remarkable." Bran glanced at the tactical display. "Captain, it's working. The swarm is scattered. Their coordination is breaking." Myra allowed herself a small nod. "Good. But stay alert. They will adapt again." The swarm shifted, larger machines attempting to rebuild and combine, but the humans were faster. They used every advantage of the wreck sector, debris fields as shields, narrow passes as traps, and gravity shifts to push enemy units into collisions. The swarm's adaptation slowed, and more machines fell with each attack. Still, the cost was high. Several human ships had sustained heavy damage, shields flickering or failing entirely. Sparks flew across the decks, and alarms rang constantly. The crew worked tirelessly, repairing systems, loading weapons, and maintaining focus under fire. Tom muttered, "I have never seen such a fight. Machines that never rest, yet humans keep up with them." Myra's gaze stayed fixed on the tactical map. "Because humans endure. We do not give up. We fight harder when the odds are against us. That is why we are still standing." Bran studied the swarm's formation. "Captain, if we can locate the core, the central control, we might end this quickly. It should be hidden in the largest wrecks, but it will be heavily defended." Myra's jaw tightened. "Then we go for it? Prepare a strike team. We cannot let them rebuild and spread beyond this sector. Humanity answers not only to calls for help, but to threats that endanger all." The strike team was ready within minutes. Smaller ships carried soldiers and engineers toward the heart of the swarm. They moved carefully, using debris as cover, and weapons trained on any movement. The swarm responded with immediate force, sending waves of drones to intercept. "Brace for impact!" Bran shouted. Explosions rocked the ships as drones collided with shields. Sparks flew across the bridge, but the team pressed on. Myra watched, every movement calculated. She gave orders with clarity, her voice calm but commanding. "Fire when ready. Use precision, not brute force. Avoid waste. We need the core intact to destroy it completely." The boarding team reached the largest wreck, the suspected location of the swarm's heart. Machines swarmed around the entrance, but the human soldiers advanced, using agility and tactics honed through generations on Earth. They moved with speed and cunning, dodging attacks and striking with precision. Inside the wreck, the environment was chaotic. Broken corridors, flickering lights, and moving metal threatened to crush them at every turn. Yet the humans advanced. Every corner, every turn, was a test of skill and endurance. Finally, at the center of the wreck, they found it, the core. A massive, glowing sphere of machinery, surrounded by layers of defensive drones. Its hum filled the chamber, alive with power. Ral's voice echoed in their comms. Destroy it. If the core falls, the swarm will collapse. Myra's voice was steady. We will. Humanity does not back down. The team prepared explosives, setting charges at weak points identified by Ral. Each second was critical. The swarm attempted to defend the core, but the humans anticipated their moves, countering with agility and precision. Outside, the fleet maintained pressure, keeping the swarm engaged and preventing reinforcements from reaching the core. The plan worked. The charges were set, the team withdrew, and Myra gave the order. Fire! The explosion rocked the wreckage, sending shockwaves through the field. The core shattered, and energy cascaded outward, disabling nearby drones and machines. The swarm staggered, uncoordinated for the first time. Bren let out a quiet breath. It is over, for now. Myra looked at the tactical display. The swarm was scattered and broken. Human ships were damaged, but the field was cleared. Humanity had endured and turned the tide. Ral whispered, almost in awe, I have never seen such courage. Such strength. Myra nodded. This is what humanity is. We fight, we endure, we protect. That is why we answer the call of the lost, and why we will face any threat. The fleet regrouped, ready for the final phase of the battle. The turning point had come, and for the first time, victory seemed possible. The graveyard of ships was quiet after the destruction of the swarm's core. Sparks floated across drifting wrecks, and fires glowed faintly in the darkness. Human ships moved carefully through the debris, shields damaged, engines strained, but the fleet had survived. Captain Myra stood on the bridge of the Resolute, her eyes fixed on the scanners. The swarm was scattered, but not gone. Small groups of drones moved independently, attempting to rebuild. Their movements were slow and uncoordinated, but even fragments could threaten a single ship if ignored. Lieutenant Bren leaned over the tactical console. Captain, the swarm is weak, but it could recover if we leave. They need to be finished completely. Myra nodded. Then we do not wait. Prepare the fleet. We strike together, all at once. Engineer Tom checked the weapons. All systems ready. Ships are damaged, but we can still fire with precision. We must be careful, or we risk losing more. Ral, watching from his medbay, gave a faint nod. You are Deathworlders. You have strength beyond my people. Perhaps you will end what we could not. Myra addressed the fleet. Humanity answers the call of those in need. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. Today, we fight not only for life, but for all who may fall if we fail. Strike together. End this threat. The fleet moved in formation. Smaller ships advanced first, drawing the remaining swarm into traps between drifting wrecks. Medium and large ships followed, weapons primed, engines ready for rapid maneuvers. The drones, though disorganized, attacked with desperation. Explosions lit the darkness as human ships fired in coordinated bursts. Shields shimmered and sparked as enemy fire struck, but the humans moved with speed and purpose. Every shot counted, every maneuver was calculated to destroy without waste. Ral guided the strike team to intercept the swarm fragments. Aim for the largest clusters, he instructed. Once broken, the smaller drones cannot rebuild quickly. The human crews worked together flawlessly. One ship would draw the swarm, another would fire from behind cover. Explosions rocked the field as metal machines shattered and fell into drifting wrecks. The debris itself became part of the battle, crushing drones that tried to escape. Captain Myra gave a clear order. All ships focus on the largest remaining machine units. Destroy them before they can merge. The fleet responded with precision. Heavy cannons roared, missiles exploded against metal armor, and rapid-fire turrets shredded anything in their path. Human crews moved through the chaos with determination, turning fear into action. Even with the swarm broken, danger remained. Some drones attempted suicide attacks, ramming ships in a final effort. Pilots dodged and countered, using agility and environment to survive. Humanity's instincts, shaped by harsh worlds and constant challenge, gave them the edge. The final approach led to the largest wreck in the field. From within, the last swarm units tried to assemble a new core. The strike team moved carefully, guided by Raal, past collapsed corridors and flickering lights. Every step was a test, but their training and determination carried them forward. At last, they reached the chamber where the new core had begun. It was smaller than the first, but dangerous. Machines moved around it like guards, repairing and rebuilding. The team set explosives at weak points, careful to avoid premature detonation. Myra's voice came through the COMM: set the charges and retreat immediately. No hesitation. Humanity does not leave a threat unfinished. The team worked quickly, moving with practiced precision. Charges were set. Every drone within range was destroyed as they withdrew. Then Myra gave the final order. Fire! The chamber erupted in a controlled explosion. Shock waves rattled the surrounding wrecks, tearing apart the last fragments of the swarm's machinery. Energy cascaded outward, disabling remaining drones. The graveyard was silent once more. The fleet regrouped, checking systems and accounting for damage. Human ships had suffered, but the swarm was gone. Victory had been earned through courage, intelligence, and endurance. Raal looked at the humans with awe. I have never seen such strength. My people fought with order and courage, yet it was not enough. You fought with heart, with instinct, and with unity. You are the answer my people dreamed of. Myra allowed herself a small smile. We are humans. When someone calls for help, we answer. When danger rises, we face it. That is who we are. Bran turned to her. Captain, the sector is clear. No signs of remaining machines. We can begin repairs and return to known space. Myra nodded. Good. But send a message. Let all who hear know that humanity responds to calls for help. We protect life, and we will stand against any threat. Raal's eyes glowed faintly. I will tell my records. Your name, your actions, will be remembered. You are not just survivors. You are guardians. The fleet began its slow journey back. Fires in the wrecks faded, leaving only drifting metal and silent husks. Yet the legacy of the battle remained. Humanity had faced the impossible, endured the unthinkable, and emerged victorious. On the Resolute, Captain Myra looked out at the dark field. The graveyard of ships would remain a warning, but also a testament. Where others saw despair, humans had brought hope. Where others had fled, humans had stood firm. In the darkness of space, one truth shone bright. Humanity would answer the call of those in need, and no threat, no matter how ancient or powerful, would be left unchallenged. The SOS that had echoed through the void had been answered, and in doing so, a legend was born.